Right, let's bring in the lead consultant of the National Sodium Guideline, Dr. Omotola Davis. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight. Quite scary. I mean, we're having conversations while that report was going on, and you made us understand that what an average person needs a day, an adult, is a level teaspoon of salt.
Yes,
a day,
yes.
Nothing more than that.
No.
That is scary because, you know, just like we said, we would have just played Killing Me Softly before this conversation started. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, how timely is this, you know, guidelines, sodium guidelines in Nigeria? Well, why do we need this now?
Okay, the WHO, which is the global health police for everybody, had recommended since 2013 that by 2025, all countries should endeavor to reduce the population salt consumption by 30%. So we're starting very late.
Why is this important now?
Yes, it is important because the dynamics in terms of causes of death is shifting towards non-communicable diseases. Unlike what it used to be, that we used to have communicable diseases. And a number of these communicable diseases have been addressed, or have been addressed. Right. And we also know how to prevent, how to treat, how to manage them. But non-communicable diseases, a number of them are silent killers. A number of people don't know, as we have discussed before, that we acquire taste for salt. We acquire taste for sugar. These are things we have now realized are not good for our health. And so, and the government is so concerned because it's also a burden on the health system. The number of deaths arising from them is high. The number of diseases arising from them. In the recent past, there's hardly any day you will see that you will not see somebody raising funds for kidney disease. Hardly. And people used to ask, what is the local government doing? What is the government doing? What is the philanthropist doing? Why must they go on media begging for money? And do you know the number of people going on dialysis? Do you know the cost of the daily dialysis for those who fall into that category? So these are things that are preventable. So if you can prevent it by profile, by a change in our lifestyle, you understand? Like I told you that we acquire taste for these things. So if we unlearn it and decide to know that it's not good for our health, then we can decide to drop it because we want to live long.
In other words, you're saying there has been an established link between high sodium and non-communicable diseases.
Very, very fast.
Okay, great. You know, on paper, this is fantastic. But let me ask you, doctor, in a country where street food and the fast food, just grab and go, you know, is a way of life for millions of Nigeria, whether it's the informal roadside eatery, popularly known as Mama Put, or others. How do you realistically control sodium intake in places like that?
That is part of what this guideline is trying to address. Because it's not only, because we realize that many of us now eat outside the home.
Yep.
This wasn't
life on the go.
Like we can't.
Yes,
we can't,
this wasn't the practice of the past. So most of the food that fall prey or that are high in sodium are foods that are commonly eaten, and most of them are processed through the industrial process. Most of them. So those ones that fall into that category are the ones that are targeted at. Let's bring these ones down in this centrally processed food that all of us buy, like bread, biscuits, the number of the condiments. You understand?
Doc, you're breaking some hearts right now as a hearer. No. Like, what? So what are we going to do?
No, we are trying to ensure that the hearts
very, very important.
Remain intact.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely. So these guidelines, what are the specific guidelines? Educate us on that. And what are the signs? What do we need to look out for, you know, to understand that you have there's sodium, high level of sodium in your system?
The first thing that is very common is high blood pressure. And a number of people that have high blood pressure, a couple of them that have the privilege of getting realized or going to the hospital and being managed, you will still find a number of them also saying that their blood pressure refused to crash, despite this medication
taken,
and measures,
Yeah.
because of the lifestyle. A number of people don't realize, and many of the doctors will advise you that, oh, madam, Oga, your BP is high. Avoid this, avoid that, reduce this, reduce that. But because people still do not also understand, they will still go taking them in wherever they find them. In excess. And it's not only in Nigeria. Let us correct that impression.
Right.
It's globally. Yes, and that's why WHO has come with the directive, with the advising member countries to crash the sodium content or intake of their food to 30%.
What are the other guidelines? I mean, beyond crashing the sodium intake, specifically.
The other things that...
Does this just address sodium intake, or...?
The guideline addresses sodium.
Okay. We have seen some countries like Hungary and Portugal implement taxes on sodium, high sodium food, just to crash it.
Yeah.
Is this a direction Nigeria is also looking at?
We are looking at that because what it means is that we will task industries that fail to comply with the regulations.
Great.
But in our own system, once there's a regulation, there's a law, you don't break that law. If you break that law, then you face the penalties. Either your commodities or your products are not allowed in the public space to be sold in the public space.
Well, it's one thing to come up with these guidelines. It's another thing to actually implement and be sure that maybe food handlers, for example, that we're talking about, will they, implement some of the measures that you put in place?
Exactly.
How do you ensure that, these guidelines are actually followed to the letter? And especially, again, food handlers and medical tests and all of that.
The beauty of it is that the guidelines is a precursor to regulations. And regulations are laws. If you break the law, you face the consequence. So these are the things that have been put in place to ensure that everybody, and it's not only about industry, even we are targeting hotels, eateries, raising awareness,
public awareness.
Yes, like public awareness, like what we are doing, and then we are also trying to also encourage catching them young. The public spaces that produce and provide food to the public are also part of those that are within the net.
Hopefully the guidelines will include, alternatives to sodium and all of that. You do have.
Yes.
Just for reiteration, half a teaspoon.
Level teaspoon.
For an adult.
A day.
A day. And for children.
From all sources.
From all sources.
Yes.
And for children?
Children lower than that.
Lower than that.
Children between 0 to 6 months don't need to do, because they don't need it at all, because they're supposed to be on breast milk.
And that's how they begin to acquire the taste.
And then 6 to 24 months, much lower than the level teaspoon. So where people complain that the children take from their mother or whatever, these are part of the things you encourage them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omotola Davis, Lead Consultant National Sodium Guideline, joining us tonight on News Now.